Good afternoon. A couple of weeks ago, we listened to a claims of fact speech that stated, actions taken against illegal immigrants Mexicans is blown out of proportion. The advocate supported this statement by using the secondary claims. First, illegal immigrants fluctuates with economic shifts. Second, President Donald Trump exaggerates the problem of a false threat. And third, toxic measures enacted are creating greater foreign affairs complications. Today, I'll be challenging these claims with the claims that, first, illegal immigration does not fluctuate with economic shifts. Second, the U.S. has always had immigration issues, not just under President Donald Trump. And third, immigration does not affect greater foreign affairs. The first supporting claim I would like to discuss from the advocate is that illegal immigration fluctuates with economic shifts. The advocate uses a source to provide this called The Balance. However, The Balance is a financial advising magazine, and he quotes an article by Kimberly Amadio entitled The Ups and Downs of the U.S. Economy. The author, Kimberly Amadio's background is in economic analysis and business strategy. Therefore, she has no background or experience in immigration. She's not an expert on the topic because her schooling is, she has a master's from MIT in business science, not anything to do with immigration. Furthermore, the article is just stating the falling and rising of the U.S. GDP. The source does not say anything about how immigration and the economy are related. There is no relationship between the two, which means that the claim has no backing to show that there is a correlation. The advocate's second supporting claim is Donald Trump exaggerates the problem of a false threat. However, I think that immigration has always been a problem for the U.S. and not just Mexicans and not just under President Trump. The U.S. Department of State's website for history shows that in 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act banned Chinese laborers from entering the U.S. and becoming citizens until 1898. In 1907, Japanese were no longer allowed to enter the U.S. under an agreement with the U.S. government. We've also had Angel Island, which was from 1910 to 1940, which was an immigration station off the coast of California, where immigrants would have to wait for more than a year to be able to enter the United States. We also have Ellis Island, which was opened in 1892 to process immigrants, and which 2% were sent back if they were not deemed eligible to work and help the economy grow. In 1924, the Immigration Act set quotas on immigrants allowed in the United States. High quotas were set for countries in North and West Europe. Low quotas were set for South and East Europe. All Asian immigrants were banned under this act. However, no limits for immigration were put on for immigrants from the Americas. We had open borders, but with the creation of border control. So also want to state that the advocate says that Donald Trump has been causing a false threat. However, the advocate uses information that undermines this claim. In an interview with Brookings University, Philip Brown stated, "The wall will do little to curb drug flow from Mexico to the U.S." This contradicts his claim of a false threat because the source is saying that there is a flow of drugs from the U.S., from Mexico to the U.S., which proves that there is unregulated travel across the border, which is quite the opposite of a false threat. Also, ABC reported that President Obama was known as deporter-in-chief because between 2009 and 2015, his administration removed more than 2.5 million people, and Donald Trump's administration has not been able to match that number. The third supporting claim I would like to challenge is that toxic measures enacted are creating foreign affair complications. The advocate uses two sources. The first being GovTrack US's website, where he quotes, which the website only breaks down the Criminal Alien Gang Member Act, Removal Act. And the second website is the second source is a New York Times article which explains what would happen if the U.S. withdrew from NAFTA. However, the advocate does not explain and fails to support how that the two are related of greater foreign affairs and immigration. After evaluating this information further, I hope that you would agree that the actions taken against illegal immigrants are not blown out of proportion, as the speaker led us to believe. Thank you.
Organizationally, it's easy to follow. On the first point, I didn't think that you got much from, challenging the credentials of the author of the article there. I'm not exactly sure that business science is not related to the state of the economy and the relationship between immigration. It doesn't get you that much to suggest that there is some important difference between the degrees that somebody perceived and the conclusions they're arriving at, unless you can explain what those differences are. To me, the more useful information is, any argument that says that, immigration seems to be flowing in one direction and it is causing a substantial impact. You don't really offer any evidence on that particular point. You kind of just take it as a given that that is true. I think that how important the advocate's argument is on this point is also not explored. You kind of just are reflexively responding to the argument without thinking about, well, what does this mean? Why does it have an impact in the long run? I'm not sure that it has that important an impact. The second point is an interesting point, because you basically suggest that it's not Trump who's an alarmist about this, that we've always had continuing issues about immigration, some of which don't sound all that appealing about our history. The Chinese Exclusion Act and the limitation on people coming from other parts of the world. But there is a demonstration that there has always been, for more than 150 years here, some kind of immigration restrictions, and you've got good examples that you point to. We have places where people were sent back. You don't really cite the source on this information. I assume it's relatively factual data, but I do think that you ought to be citing where your information came from there. You kind of try and turn the Brookings Institution quote around by suggesting, well, the very fact that there's an acknowledgement that drugs are flowing shows that there's a problem. The question of whether or not a wall would make a difference doesn't deny that there is, in fact, a problem that's going on there. I think there are other ways to demonstrate that problem as well. A little additional research on your part probably would have made a stronger argument than simply trying to turn the one piece of evidence around on the advocate. And then it was interesting to note that the Obama administration deported substantially more immigrants, undocumented immigrants, than the Trump administration has done, which suggests that this is not an alarmism on the part of Trump, but rather it's a continuing problem. And I think that's the argument that you're really trying to make. And that's maybe the best piece of information on that whole second point. And then the third point, you just basically challenge the relevance of the evidence to the claim. And I don't understand what the point of the actual claim was. Have there been examples of foreign affairs problems that have resulted from our immigration policies? Is it just that there's just been some general criticism by foreign leaders? You basically point out what their evidence was, but I don't remember what the impact of any of that was. So I think you're kind of dismissing those arguments reasonably well, but I think you could be a little bit more forceful on a couple of those points. All right, thank you.